All right, we'll start again from after the parentheses. In the middle of page AyinBase 7, the line starts with the word shezeh Etzem. We have distinguished in principle between Ha'ora and Etzem, and then we went further pointing out that the Etzem, as it is identifiable within the functioning world, it does not correspond, does not or don't represent the Etzem the way it is L'mayla. Because the Etzem as it exists, as it is to be identified in a functioning world, the Etzem itself has a qualifier. It's Etzem Chai, it's Etzem Meir, Etzem Mur, Etzem Behiri. There's some kind of a description applicable. Okay, now we'll start further after the parentheses. Aval l'maylo, but l'maylo ein ha'inyan ba'ifun kazeh klal. There the union is not at all ba'ifun kazeh in this manner. In other words, this union that the Etzem in the functioning world has some kind of a definition, gave us a means to explain how the oil comes from the Etzem. Because the oil is representative of the Etzem. The sun is Vehiri, and therefore the oil is Meir. The Nefesh is Chai, and therefore the oil of the Nefesh is Mechaya. So there's some kind of a correspondence between the oil and the Meir and the Etzem. And therefore that's how we understand how the oil comes from the Etzem. Even though Etzem and oil are distant from one another. But l'maylo, this union, that does not explain it. It's not at all this way. There's no correspondence, there's no correlationship, there's no similarity between the oil and the Etzem. Shaharei ho'atzmus movdol legamri mikol ma shenimtze beho'er. Since that the atzmus is movdol, it's totally distant, separated. The word distant is not even correct, because distance means it's in the same plane. This is separate completely from anything that is present in the oir. And that comes forth in Agilu as a representation of him. And there l'maylo, it is not applicable, is not correct to refer to it as Chai Ba'etzem, as a living entity, but not a living entity by being imbued with life, but it is self-contained life. Oy Moir, or a luminary, Ukai Gavna, and such other descriptions. Shakol Elul, because all of these, Hein Toyarim, all of these are descriptions. And therefore they are not applicable b'atzmusei. So I want to stop here for a moment and give us a little bit of an insight. What is the significance of all that? Since it's not possible to know Atzmus, so what's the point of digging in all of these things? What is that? What is the significance of this pursuit? You would attempting to understand that which is not understandable, so say so. What do you gain by not understanding it better? So the Kol Elohim Te'arim. All of these are Torah. What's meant Te'arim? Te'arim means adjectives, descriptions. If you are describing something, that means that there is a something. And here is the point of all of this thing. Our tendency, and this is what we must correct one way or another, although it is very difficult and very challenging. Our tendency is, if I relate to something, I know what I'm relating to. And if I don't know, then I can't relate to it. So we have to understand that this may be true in all things that we experience and all things that we deal with. But when we talk about Elokus, we have no inkling, we do not have a sense of a presence. Like I said, we cannot go and take a piece of Elokus or have it. That's a total misunderstanding and a misguidance. This is in fact this is the light of the goyim. This is not for us. We are warned right there. Remember, you didn't see any form. When Hashem spoke to you, you didn't see anything. Who is speaking to me? If I don't see who I'm speaking to, who is speaking to me, so how do I retain that relationship?
From what you're saying, there's no relationship.
Huh?
From what you're saying, there's no possible relationship.
That's it. So how what are we doing? Baruch Atah Hashem, is that a relationship or not? Who are you talking to? This exposes the fundamental error that we are prone to make. But yes, what we relate to things that we have discovered. We have discovered, we have found it by our experience, by touch and so forth. And to what extent do I know it? To the extent that I have discovered it, to the extent that I have identified with my seichel, with my experience. Our relationship with the Creator is not from our side, it is from His side. He gave Himself to us. This is how we relate to Him. He gave us the mitzvahs. We would not discover the mitzvahs at all. Even the Oveis who did mitzvahs, so we say, this is not the real thing. They were imitating. The real mitzvah is only because He gave it to us. He establishes this relationship. Our relationship to Him is by what? By Kabbalah soil. This is how we relate to Him. In His kindness, He gave us a mitzvah. And if we accept that mitzvah, that's our relationship to Him. He creates the whole thing. There is not an entity to which we can relate by our identifying it. Very, very important. identifying it is contrary to the Jewish faith, to Jewish belief. It's a contrary to our Emunah. Where is the Eibishter? The Chassidus Rebbe says, where is he not? That is a correct answer, because there's not a place where he is. You don't know him by his is. This is what we're saying over here. So, it's not a mitzvah, so this all leads to principle, okay, so it's not an entity, how does oil emanate for a non-entity? Where is the place of oil? But the important thing for us at this moment is to recognize the truth to which we are relating. Atzmus is moved and the whole meaning of toyarim. Toyarim means some kind of a descriptive form, an adjective. Are not shayach, totally inapplicable to Atzmus. Therefore, since toyarim are not applicable, so if you say there is oil, the oil has to have a toyer. What is the oil megala? Where does it come from? There's no toyer. There's no source. Omar she'omar. And that which we say, Mechaye Chayim, this is an expression in the Gemara, in the Chazal, Mechaye Chayim yitin lecha Chayim. Mechaye Chayim, the one who gives life, or enlivens life. B'chai v'loi b'chayim. They also say Chai v'loi b'chayim, he lives, but not with life, so to speak, but with a functioning life element. All that, hu b'ha'oir ha'seva kolam. These kind of references of life, Chai b'chayim, this is applicable to the oir. Oir ha'seva kolal mean shehu b'chinas gili. This is the oir ha'seva kolal. What all of a sudden ha'seva kolal? Because oir pnimi hamemale has a definitive definition. He will say chai v'loi b'chayim. That's not memale. Chai v'loi b'chayim, this is same. But nevertheless, there is a Torah that say chai. He gives life. The Ayin that he gives life is applicable to Sevik Olam, that which encompasses all the worlds, and that gives life to everything. I'll still return to this principle here. But in Atzmus, ein shayach shum toyer. There, any description, any toyer, any kind of a direct reference, what is this about? What is this? Is not applicable. The gam toyare hashlilo, which means that even toyare hashlilo, the toyarim, the descriptions of negation, also not applicable. Here's explanation. As when we say chai, he is living. So we say, no, we don't mean living per se, but we mean glishla is a hepech, to negate to that which is not living. So that is a form of description, but not direct description. We're not identifying this through chai, but we say no. But he is chai because the hepech, the absence of life is not there, and therefore he is chai. So even though we're not focusing on the Chai, B'Rishon is HaHepech, V'chein Oyer, and similarly light, we say Rishon is HaHepech that it's not dark, U'Chai Gavna. Ze Gam Kein, this too, Shayach Rak B'Hagilui Mimenu Yisborach. This too is applicable only B'Hagilui Mimenu Yisborach, only that which is expressing the Rishon's presence. The Be'atzmus, the Be'atzmus, because in Atzmus, Shlil as HaHepech, the negation of the opposite, to say it's not alive, it's not alive, it's not liram. Einoi alidei sheneimar shu chai. It is not by saying that he is alive. That is incorrect way of describing the way the Shlil HaHepech is in Atzmus. You say no, he is not alive because he's alive. Thereby we are shoylel, we are negating the opposite. That's not correct. That's not a correct way of describing it. Why? The kasher onu oimri. I want to call your attention again to what length the Rebbe is going into this to give us a clear view of what he wants us to understand. And again, the point of this all is we should have a correct relationship, a correct understanding, a recognition of Elokus rather than that which we formulate in our limited mind. The kasher ono imri, because when we say chai, living, lishlo is hahepech mechayus, in order in intending to negate hahepech mechayus, that which is opposite of living, harei zeh chai be'etzem. This is actually referring to that which is chai be'etzem, which is chai in essence, which means he is chai, and it's impossible for him not to be chai. So what does that refer to? Chai be'etzem, that which is in essence alive. Rak she'ein chai is b'murgosh, except that we are saying ein chai is b'murgosh, it's not chayus that can be identified b'murgosh in actual sensing, identifying as chai. K'moi chai b'toyer hachiyuv, like the chai in toyer hachiyuv, in the positive way, in the direct way of describing it. What is chai b'toyer hachiyuv and chai b'toyer hashlil? Chai b'toyer hachiyuv means when you say a person's alive, what does that mean? He has an enthusiasm, he has a certain, he exhibits excitement and interest. Chai, he's alive. This is chai b'toyer hachiyuv. His life is murgosh, and there is a definitive inyan that you're referring to as chai. That's what chai b'toyer hachiyuv. Chai b'toyer hashlil. This is what's called chai be'etzem. Chai be'etzem is not dependent on his activity, of being active, and exhibiting any kind of excitement, any kind of pursuit. In our world, it's not in our world, it's in the world throughout the ages. When people drink and go wild, look at this, he's really alive. This is called life because he exhibits his excitement. It's not even the excitement of living; it's just excitement that he is present. In any case, there we could see the name Chai b'toyer hachiyuv. What means toyer hachiyuv? Toyer hachiyuv means something which is identifiable, and the life element has a definitive effect the fact that he is alive. Chai be'etzem does not have a practical, a functioning effect on its presence, exhibiting any kind of functional effect. This is what we are saying all the time, that just to give us a touch of this in we're saying Psuki de Zimra, we're saying Bichis Krishma, we're saying Krishma, we are really involved and we're really expressing ourselves, our view and our inner insight. So come to Shemoneh Esrei, there is no exhibit whatsoever. Because this is where it is essence to essence.
It is essence to essence?
Essence to essence.
Essence to essence.
That's why we stand, steady. There is no exhibition. There, you're not talking, he's not alive. This is it. This is the whole mitzvah, so this is the whole person. Inactive, and this is the whole person. We spoke about it many times. That Shemoneh Esrei is very, as much as it doesn't express anything, it is representing a profound truth of the neshama. So one could say, well, but I don't really feel it. The very fact that you can stand there, and it makes sense for you to stand, still that already is speaking for your insight, for the truth. Surely we are very limited how much we can understand on this.
Comparing this to Atmos or Torah Shliwa? Comparing this to Atmos or Torah Shliwa? The Shemoneh Esrei. What's that?
Comparing it to Toyer. It's not a Toyer, this is the reality itself. Hashem Echad is a Toyer. Hashem Echad. V'hamtus Hashem Elokecha, that's an experience.
That's what it said.
This is the reality itself. In our world, this is how it is. When we speak, when you say Chai, even though Chayus is something which we don't understand what life is, but we still refer to it. Lishel is a hepech, so it's not alive. So that's what he says. Now this all the term, this is shaykh only b'chai be'etzem. Ukiyodua, and as is known, the teyare hashlilo, that teyare, the descriptions of negation, meaning we're not describing the real thing directly, we're just describing it in a manner to say this is it is not the opposite. It is not lacking this. Hem gam kein teyarim, they also are also teyarim, are also descriptive terms shemetarim as adover, that describe this thing. The ois hatoyar hashoyl as hahepach. With the toyar hashoyl as hahepach, that is negating the opposite. It is a toyar. In our terminology, to bring it down within our own mode of thinking, then from there we take it further. Like we speak lately, someone who is a multi-billionaire, and you say he can afford a breakfast. It's folly to say he can afford a breakfast. But it's true. This affording a breakfast is not describing his wealth. It's describing that there's no way that he doesn't have it. It's almost a sarcastic statement, but nevertheless, it is referring to, it describing something. It's describing wealth. Like we said the other day, we explained a wealthy person versus a king. By a king, he can afford a breakfast. It's totally inapplicable. It's not even describing it. Not in any kind, not even in a shezeh shlila. Because the wealthy person, yes, he can afford it, but he possesses that which enables him to buy a breakfast. There's something we describe incorrectly, in a very limited, in a very misunderstood manner. But still, you're referring to the reality. A melech cannot afford a breakfast. He doesn't. That whole thing doesn't apply. This one never says. Ki yodua de tere hashlilo hem gam kin teyari. Tere hashlilo are also teyari, which means they are. Teyari means an adjective, in literal terms. Adjective applies to a noun, which means that there is a noun that this applies to. Shemetarim as adovor. And they are describing this thing, be'oisei hatoyar hashoyl es hahepech. They're describing it in a manner that this description is not intended to describe it directly, fully, but just to describe it in a manner to say that he is not lacking this thing. So therefore, since he's not describing it directly, so in what way is he describing it? So we say this is what we're saying. This shezeh shlili is also a toyer. It's also a proper description. Let's finish the next line and then we'll understand what it is. Rak she'einam metarim b'midu mugbeles v'yidua. This is also terms of description, except that this description is not a limited description. If you say, like we said, that a wealthy person can afford a breakfast, it's a toyer, but it's not mitayr. The limit, the form in which you mitayr is not really exposing the real thing, but it's still a toyer. You're not giving a sense of what it is, but you're giving a sense of what it is not. So male, therefore it means that teyari hashlila are also teyari. Again, I want that we should keep alive, so to speak, because this is what's called a haskalah pursuit. We are not used to pursue haskalah. We are in a completely different world. Whatever we learn, we need to be touch it. Let me taste it. Let me feel it. A scholar is a completely different thing. Just delving into the seichel and forgetting about the whole world. In what way does this touch us? That's what I'm saying. Do we really want to pursue it? Yeah, we decided to pursue it. In what way does this pertain to us? I was once traveling in a car with Zalman Schechter, all of us all. Nebuch, the man, I don't know, he drowned in Stussy. This was in a time when he was still a shtickle mensch. So we were driving in the car, and he had a little bell hanging off his mirror, in the front, the mirror in the rear view mirror. And every time the car would shake, of course, the bell would ring. So I said to me, what's the bell? Well, the bell is that every time the bell rings, it reminds me to think about Hashem. So I said, Hashem, you need to be reminded about Hashem. How do you breathe? So he got very upset. Yeah, you guys unbottle everything. But this was the first steps towards the slippery slope that he was going on. Hashem is represented by a bell, by a sound, something like a prick. So this is what the Rebbe is giving us. You should understand. Hashem is not something that needs to prick you. Not something that you can grasp, that you can identify personally. I got him in my pocket, okay, that's it. Hashem will, as I said before, relate to only because He gives us and allows us to relate to. He gives us mitzvahs, and this is how we know Him. He gives us a world in which we recognize His presence by Him creating this world and by giving us the mitzvahs that pertain to the various, like we say in the morning, we have to say Moed Ani. At night, you have to say Hamapil. Everything in the way that He had presented Himself, so to speak, in terms of relating to us, not Himself, in terms of how it pertains to our lives. So Teyare Hashlilo is also not correct, because a toyar, any toyar, has an inside and dover, an entity. An entity is it doesn't exist. Okay, this will be pursued stuff. Okay, this is it for this morning.
Yeah.